Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Bobby Ruins Marketing. And this week, I'm going to ruin scarcity and urgency for you. Specifically, I'm going to talk about why if your business, if your products, if you're relying on limited time only, you can only buy now, those kinds of things, you got some problems that you might want to think about in your business. And I know that's not something a lot of people want to hear. And I know it actually sets me apart from most of the marketers out there, right? Because most of the people out there are teaching you to use urgency and use scarcity and use launches and use all of these things as a way to actually get people to buy. Well, I'm going to explain to you why that's not a good idea. And again, I'm not going to tell you to never use it, but I'm going to tell you about the dangers and why you need to be thinking twice before using it. So that's my goal for today. Now, first of all, before we get into kind of talking details, I want to talk about the fact that the reality is that a lot of the urgency and the scarcity and all of that stuff that we're hearing about from marketers out there is just BS. I mean, seriously, it is. And so I want to talk about that because this is part of the problem. Now, part of the problem with urgency and scarcity is that people like me see it all the time and know people are full of it. So that is a problem in and of itself. We're going to get to the other problems later, but we're going to take on this first. Because the reality is that a lot of the gurus who are talking about using this don't actually honor it. Yeah, that's true. Now, I don't know about you, but I've heard all the time about people letting people in after the doors close in a launch. And I got to confess to you, back in the old days, when my template library was a kind of a launch only, even if it was my email only launch method, I would actually, let people in when it wasn't open. I had back doors. I had back doors where friends asked, where peers asked, where, someone around me said, hey, I really want to buy it. I would let them in. And the reality is that that's actually how most entrepreneurs work. Now, some people don't, but most people do. Most people have those backdoor ways that they will let people in, even if they say they won't. But beyond that, let's talk about evergreen funnels, because everybody talks about, we can have an evergreen funnel and use something like deadline funnel, or we have Kartra, and Kartra has all of this stuff built in where we can time things and we can remove bonuses and we can do all of that as part of an evergreen launch. I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. That stuff doesn't really work. Sorry, I actually almost said a bad word there that Facebook would have been mad at me for. That ish doesn't work. Now, it works if people don't know the ways around it. But you know what? If you're using incognito windows and I just use a different email to sign up, I can actually get in even after the deadline. Yeah, I can go through the funnel all over again. It's just the reality of the way this stuff works. I mean, there's no way to honestly say, Bobby Klink can never buy this again except for this. The way it's going to work is based on cookie tracking or my email or something like that. And there are ways to get around that. So again, the urgency and the scarcity of evergreen launches is kind of BS if people know about it. The other thing, though, that I want to talk about is that there is a reality that there are a lot of people teaching you to use this in a dishonest way. Yeah. Now, I don't think my mentors that I follow do that, any of them, but I can tell you that I took a program a while back. It's been a long while, more than 2 years ago, that was teaching you about how to do high ticket sales. And they told you to put on your Evergreen webinar page. And this was like an Evergreen webinar that people would go into and then would sign up for the webinar. And then from the webinar, the call to action was to book a call with you to try to sell them into your program. They taught us to put on there that there was a limited number of spots available in the webinar. I downright refused. No one else in the program refused. But I said, that is the biggest bunch of bull caca I've ever heard. And they're like, well, there really is a limit. You can only have up to 1,000 people on the webinar in this software. I was like, yeah, okay. Because there's a chance that I'm going to have 1,000 people on a webinar that's evergreen at any given time. They knew it was BS, even though they were spending a ton of money on Facebook ads. They never even came close to their limit. But they were using that BS scarcity to do things like that. And I'll hear people do things like that. Like they'll suggest that you like maybe have a VIP option and say, oh, but it's limited to 10 seats. But then you'll really let 20 people in. Please, for the love of all that's holy, if you're going to do that, be honest. Don't lie to people. It's just not cool. It's probably also fraud. I mean, it is fraud. If people relied on it to actually, sign up, you're probably violating the Federal Wire Act, but we can leave that aside for now. But the thing that's kind of funny is that this stuff about people being honest with their urgency and scarcity and people actually meaning it is so freaking rare that we're stunned when people actually stand by it. And think about it for a second. Like there's a couple of people in the online space who actually mean it. Like people like Stu McLaren. When he says that Tribe you can only sign up for during that limited period when card opens, he means it. He won't even let people like Amy Porterfield, his friend, into the thing outside of that period. I mean, Amy's talked about that before. But this is so rare that we're blown away that someone would do that. Now, the reason why it's rare, though, let's be honest, is because most entrepreneurs are working from a scarcity mindset, which is funny since we're talking about scarcity and urgency, but different kind of scarcity here. People are afraid. They're afraid to not let people into their program. They want to let people in. And so they're like, well, I got to do it. I got to let them in. I got to let them in. And I get it. When I was early on, I was like, how do I turn down someone who wants to give me $1,000 right now? And that's why I had back doors. And so, again, it's all of this kind of mindset and all that. So that's kind of the background. But now that we've talked about that, I want to talk for a second about why people use it. I mean, if it's this weird thing, why do people use it? Well, people use it because it works. Just say that. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you that scarcity and urgency don't work. They do. They are very powerful marketing tools, marketing tactics, marketing strategies, whatever you want to call them. They work. They will get people off the fence. The problems, though, are that maybe there's a sign of a deeper problem if you need to rely upon scarcity and urgency. That's what I want to suggest to you. And I want to get you thinking about here. Because again, if you're on my email list and you got my email, I've noted that this might seem a bit hypocritical because I'm currently running a couple of promos that have some time limits on them. But I'm going to get to why that's okay in a bit. But first, I want to talk about what you can think about when you're looking at this issue of if you need scarcity and if you need urgency to make sales. What I would say is it's a sign that something's wrong with your offer. If your offer is truly irresistible, you don't need scarcity. You don't need urgency. And now let me define offer here. Your offer is not your product. Your offer is more than just the product. It's the product, it's the bonuses, it's the transformation, it's all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, your product is a pretty darn important part of it. And a lot of people in the marketing world would say that your scarcity and your urgency are part of your offer. And they are. But, and here's the big but. If you have a great product, great bonuses, great support, great transformations, you don't need scarcity and urgency. And we'll talk in a second about why, if you don't need it, it actually is a better thing to not use it. So we'll talk about that in a second. But before we get to that, I'm going to ask a simple question. I want to ask people to think outside of our world, because this is something I do all the time. I think outside of the online marketing world, and I say, are the tactics that we're using things that other businesses use? And if so, what would we say about it if it was happening outside of our world? Okay? Because I think that's a good way to look at it and kind of think about something, not in our like little bubble, which is where we all are so often. And I want to ask you what you think about a company, or would think about a company, that constantly relied upon urgency and scarcity to sell their product. Now, first of all, if it was literally you could only buy my product during a 2-week period, outside of seasonal businesses, nobody in the real world does that crap. We're the only ones who do. So that's a whole nother discussion. I'm going to talk about launches at some point, and I'm going to really ruffle some feathers there. But I want to step back from just the launch model for a second. What do we say about companies that constantly have sales, constantly have promotions, etc.? And there's one thing that always comes to mind. Blame it on my old lawyering days, right? Because when I was a lawyer, I had to wear suits a lot, and I had to wear dress shirts all the time. And, when I was like a really rich lawyer with too much money before I had kids and before I was being smart with my money, I would shop at nicer stores. But eventually, I started shopping at Joseph A. Bank. Now, if you don't know Joseph A. Bank, it's perfectly good stuff. Their shirts, their non-iron shirts, are some of the best out there. But I literally would never shop there unless it was buy one, get two free. Buy one, get two free. Sorry about that. But it literally was that obvious and that transparent because they were constantly running promos. And so what it told me was their products were not actually worth what they said they were. And so I was constantly waiting for the next promo, and that was the only way I would buy. And we look at that as a bargain basement type of company. So that's one company that we see that happens with. Now, this is the other example. Apple never puts stuff on sale. And Apple sells plenty of products all the time. So I'm going to ask you, which business do you think is on sounder footing? Apple or Joseph A. Bank? Now, again, they're not in the same market, so there's different situations there. But what I'm going to tell you is I want to be Apple. I don't want to be Joseph A. Bank of my business. I don't want to be I've got to give you a deal. I got to do a promo for anyone to be willing to buy. That's not where I want to be. And what the Apple example proves to us is if your, in their case, product, but in our case, offer, is irresistible, I can have it all the time available. People will buy, and I don't have to run promos. I don't have to run specials. I don't have to discount my product. I don't have to use scarcity and urgency. Now, the other thing, though, I want to point out is that if you're relying on urgency and scarcity, you're kind of in a dangerous place with your business, because what happens if that scarcity or urgency for some reason doesn't work at that time? Like, again, if you relied upon a launch model and the urgency and scarcity of a launch model, and you happen to be launching, let's say, on March 13th or 14th, right when the ish was hitting the fan with COVID. If you were in that spot, you were like, what do I do? Again, I was at that moment doing the beta launch of Badass Email Marketing, but I didn't need that cash. It was like, let's get paid to make this thing, so it wasn't like going to change my business. But if that was like your big launch of the year and you needed it, I don't want to be you right then. But that's one small example of what's happening all the time. People are basically banking on urgency and scarcity working at that moment. And it may not. It may stop working at some point. But because I know my audience tends to be people who believe in serving first, they're not purely here for the money. Here's the biggest reason not to do it, not to rely on scarcity and urgency. Yeah, you aren't serving if you're relying on urgency and scarcity. And this is one that I think I'm going to take some flack for. Because a lot of marketers would say, using it is what I've got to do to get people off the fence, and so I'm serving people when I do that. I think maybe some people believe that, but I think for most people, it's a rationalization. It's a justification. Let me explain why you aren't serving if you're basing everything on urgency and scarcity. First of all, you're basically saying to people they can't buy something when they need it. Like if you have a product that's only available once a year for a limited period of time, there are going to be people who come to you 3 months afterwards because they just learned about you 3 months or 5 months or 6 months, and you're saying, nope, sorry, you can't buy. Now again, this is if you are being authentic and actually meaning it, which to me, if you're going to rely upon urgency and scarcity, you damn well better mean it and you better live by it because we believe in integrity. And so if you're going to do that, you're literally saying, I will not serve you right now because I need urgency as a marketing tactic. If you put it like that, I want you to ask yourself, does that feel like you're serving your people? Does that feel like the best way to serve your community? To literally say, I will not serve you when you need it because I need urgency as a marketing tactic. I don't know a lot of people who have asked that question can honestly say that that is serving their people. Now, they'll rationalize it away and they'll say, well, but I need it to get people off the fence. You don't. If you create an irresistible offer, you don't. Now, the second thing I want to talk about, though, and this is where I think I'm going to get some real hate from people. When you use urgency, when you use scarcity, what you're doing is pressuring people who probably don't need your product to buy because of FOMO. Yeah, I said that. People who use this launch model, who launch once or twice a year, I don't know because I don't do that. But I'm guessing if you look at it, the number of people who actually finish their course is pretty small because a lot of people are buying saying, well, I'm buying it now. I don't need it yet, but I'm buying it now because I'm not going to be able to buy it for another year. And then sometime in the next 6 months, they decide, well, I'm actually going to take my business, my life, whatever, a different direction. And so they spent money on that course that they never dove into because they didn't freaking need. And so again, I'm going to ask you to think about this and be honest with yourself. If the only way that you can sell your product and your offer is to use scarcity, which has these two effects. Number one, you're going to get people to buy who don't need to buy your product. You're going to get them to give you money that is in no way going to serve them. And then you're going to refuse to serve other people because you're like, nope, sorry, won't sell it to you now. Is that serving your people? I know my answer. And I know I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in that world. I don't want to be, relying upon FOMO to get people to buy my products who don't need my products. I don't want to be, not serving people and refusing to serve people because, they happen to not be during that period where I'm using urgency and scarcity. That's, in my view, not service. So my goal, what I'm doing in my business, is making my products, my offers, so irresistible that I don't have to rely on that crap. So I want to talk about how that works, what you should be doing. And this is where I'm going to talk about where I joked in my email this morning that my apparently my hypocrisy knows no bounds, but it's not actually hypocritical. Because right now, we have a couple of things going on that have some urgency in them. But I'm going to talk about how I believe that you can create urgency and use urgency in an authentic way. First of all, it all starts with creating an irresistible offer. Create a product, create an offer where you're not having to make up BS values that are 10 times, you just make up some random numbers to try to get people to buy it. I'm talking about something where you actually provide a transformation that is real, that helps people, and is priced right. And if you do that, you don't have a problem. And like, I can literally use my Online Genius template library as an example. Katie and I, my integrator, who I'm wearing this shirt as a joke for her because she dropped a she dropped a picture on her foot yesterday, and I told her to blame her husband. She said no, it was actually her fault. So I'm wearing my blame Katie shirt. But we were talking about this recently because we were looking at the numbers. If you don't know, until last October, my Online Genius template library was not available Evergreen. Now, I had backdoors and things like that, but it wasn't. I basically sold it during these little email-only launch campaigns. And then last year in October, I decided, and Katie wasn't even, she was a project manager working on my rebrand to bobbyklink.com, but she wasn't even involved at that point. I decided to make it Evergreen. And by Evergreen, I didn't mean you go through some funnel or literally go to my website and buy it anytime you want. And when I did that, my sales have gone up. We have not had less than a multiple 5-figure month since then, and people are buying. We're selling more of them without the urgency and without the scarcity BS than we were before. Because it's an irresistible offer. I'm selling people all of my legal templates plus access to everything else for $1,000. And oh, by the way, we add more templates periodically. Like in the last 2 months, I think we've added the second one, but we added first an overseas VA agreement, and then we either have added or will be adding within this week a guest teacher agreement for people who are running courses. So like, we just keep making it better and better. So it's a no-brainer. So if you create an offer like that, you don't need to have urgency and scarcity. Now, with an offer like that that's already established, that is an irresistible offer, here's where you can add some fun of urgency. Not really scarcity, but urgency. Every once in a while, you may decide, you know what? We're going to do a fun promo. We're not going to reduce the price, but we'll throw something extra in. So that's what we're doing right now with our template library. We're saying, hey, anybody who buys it this month, we're going to throw in a ticket for my live event coming up in this fall, virtual live event. And that's just kind of fun. But I'm not relying upon it. It's just like a little kind of goose to get people to say, hey, if you've been thinking about it, now might be a good time to buy. But it's nothing where it's like, I'm going to be like, ew, you're going to miss it. Oh, God, don't miss it. I'm not going to do that crap. I'm going to tell people, say, hey, look, if you need this already and you want to get a ticket to my event, you should buy now. That way you get this ticket and you get the good stuff you already need. So like, that's how you can use it, just for these every once in a while promos, but not as the base of the offer. You've got to first create the offer that is in fact irresistible, that can sell itself. When you have that offer that can sell itself, then you can think about kind of adding like every once in a while these urgency things, just as why not? Let's try something and have some fun with it. But it all relies upon the offer itself being irresistible. So that's where your focus should be to begin with, is let's make this freaking offer so good that no one could say no. And I don't mean no one. Lots of people say no to my template library. And I get it. That's okay. But lots of people say yes. So that's the broader point. Now, the other piece where you'll often use like urgency play is when you're first developing a product. And you're not doing it as an urgency play. You're doing it because you've got to do things. Like, for example, Badass Email Marketing. We launched that in March as a beta round. Like, I was doing a beta launch because I wanted to get paid to create the thing, because it was the only way we were actually going to finally create the thing. In other words, the only way I was going to get off of my tuchus and actually create this course that had been like in my heart since at least last September was to do a beta round. And a beta round launch, like, literally was just a way to say, hey, we're going to give you guys an incredibly good deal. And the offer then was like, join my Fans First Society membership with an annual commitment, and you get that thing free. Okay, so like, that was like, I'm going to give you this course for free as a beta round if you join my membership for a year. And so it was like, again, a no-brainer offer. But yes, there was urgency. But part of the reason I was doing that was because I needed to create this momentum to get me off my rear end to create the thing. So that's a case where using urgency to motivate yourself is good, because it doesn't have the problems of the other kind of that we were talking about, problems of urgency and scarcity, where number one, you're lying, or number two, you're not serving your people or anything like that. This was in some ways the best way I could serve my people, because getting the momentum for me to actually create the course allows me to serve more people. But so that's like one way. And then the other place where it comes in, and this is why I'm saying what we're doing right now is not hypocrisy. Like right now, we if you haven't seen it, I don't know how you couldn't have, but we are doing a limited time sneak peek inside of Module 1 of Badass Email Marketing. And the reason we're doing that, and I have been 100% transparent on that, is because we are in the process of evergreening it. Like we finished like the first round, like I think it was early June-ish or mid-June-ish, I think is when we kind of wrapped up and finished up the first round of people going through it. So we're working on evergreening the funnel. But candidly, that's not going to be done until probably I don't know exactly. I want to say October, but I don't even know if it'll be done by October, because there's a lot of things that have to be done. And we had people in my audience asking, hey, can I get in? What can I do? And just wanting to get in. And so what we decided to do was to do kind of an intermediary internal flash sale, which is just going to be like, hey, we just, we don't have all this stuff ready, but we're going to make this available for a limited time at a discounted price as a thank you to my people. Not as a way to put pressure on people, but just to, hey, you've been on my list, you're in my world, I appreciate that, so we're going to give you a chance to buy it now without us having to do all the work of creating all of the stuff, of all of the launch, of all of the blah, 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 and we're going to give you a chance to get it now. And so we're going to do that at the end of this week. And we just said, hey, why don't we just give people access to Module 1 as a chance to kind of dip their toe in, see if they like it, see if they enjoy the way I teach email, see if they like my approach to email. Because by the way, and this probably won't surprise you, but if you want email that is sell, 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 well, you're probably not going to like my approach to email. And so I'd rather you get into Module 1 and understand that we want to get all of the stuff done. We want to that I want you to walk people through it. And Katie just put a comment as I'm doing this. Yeah, to clarify, Badass Email Marketing is done. We just haven't built the Evergreen funnel yet. And so I want to give people a chance to get into the program without having to wait for me and my team's deficiency. And again, this is where you can see me doing this kind of is in a sense for the purpose of serving my audience. Because it's like people have been asking me, hey, I want to get access. Hey, I want to get access. And I'm like, well, this is a quick way for me to do it and not make them wait. It's a way for me to serve now rather than later. And once it's available, by the way, once it's evergreened, it's going to be evergreen. People can buy it anytime they want. And we're going to have it available, and we're going to work within it to make it an irresistible offer so people are like, yeah, I want to buy that product. Oh, I do. So getting back, landing the plane, bringing this full circle. Urgency and scarcity, think of them as kind of at most, they should be the sprinkles on top of the frosting on top of your product. If you need them to sell a product, it's a problem. And I would say go back to the drawing board and find a way to make that product, make the offer irresistible. It could be that the product itself isn't quite right, or it could be that the bonuses or something else that you have isn't quite right. But if you have an irresistible offer, you don't need scarcity. You don't need urgency to make sales. This is why, for me, cart close day when I was doing launches was never really my biggest day. Cart open day, that was my biggest day, because I had people who wanted to buy, and they were just like, hey, when can I buy? Hey, when can I buy? Hey, when can I buy? My offers are pretty irresistible. And so I want you to think that way and stop thinking about how do I rely upon urgency to get people to get in because of FOMO, and instead think, how do I make this offer irresistible? When you do that, it'll all be good and you won't have to worry about it. So, my call to action, what I want to do kind of to ruin your day today or ruin marketing for you today was to get you to wake up and recognize that scarcity and urgency, they can have a place, but they should not be the centerpiece. And if you need them, you got problems. So that's it for today. I'll be back next week to ruin marketing yet again. Talk to you later and have a great week.